Welcome to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. My name is Eric, and today I'm joined by Jess.
Hello, world.
And Alex.
Hey, everyone.
That's a really awkward greeting.
Glad
Thanks.
to be here.
Are you done yet? No?
It's about to be a good day.
All right.
As Frank says.
Yeah, that's good. That's going to be your new nickname.
Giving me Buddy the Elf vibes.
And we have a very special guest joining us, Eva Brandt. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here. We're gonna start by having you just kind of, dive into our podcast culture here, where we like to listen to voicemails people send us. So Alex has a voicemail ready to go. We're gonna listen to it, and you can feel free to respond, or you can, plead the fifth.
Got it.
Hey, podcast party people. Long time caller, first time listener. So I had occasion to drop my family off entrance of CCC and then drove around to the back to park near the kids entrance. And one of the things that I noticed is the parking lot more towards the front entrance. There's a lot more sedans, SUVs. You get back over into the kids entrance. It's all minivans. Not all, but mostly minivans. And then when I was in the service later, I was saying that on the side that the kids entrance is where most of the people sit primarily, and then the other side, the older folks. So I spot where the geography of church and parking and entrances and everything kind of seems to affect how the community experiences church. I was wondering if you use anything like that at our church or other churches. What you think about that? Is that a good thing, a bad thing, or do you just not want to talk about it? All right, I'll hang up and listen. Thanks.
I feel like we should let our listeners know that the caller was not being censored or like swearing.
The Bluetooth, I think we just had some Bluetooth issues, maybe.
Alex, you want to fill in any gaps we missed there? What the question was, do we think it's weird that there's a little bit of segregation by age because of the entrances that people use?
That people go, park in, and then if you go into the worship center, I could see that. Mm-hmm. People sit probably by their closest entrance.
Yeah, because you have the kids entrance, so all the families are going to go in there, and then on the opposite of that, you have the awning where
a lot of the
seniors use because they can be dropped off at the door,
and
there's handicap parking.
A lot of handicap parking on that side.
So, I guess I don't think it's weird. I don't know.
I think that our guest parking is too far away. We should be one of those churches with golf carts.
To transport people?
Yes, for our guests.
I don't think we have that much property.
We're out there, and we're just out there friendly with the golf carts.
By the time you get out of your car and wait for the golf cart to get there, you would be at the front door from the visitor parking.
Is this just you just want to drive a golf cart?
I do, and we can't use the mule that we have because that thing is not safe and not pretty. Where do you guys typically park at Christ Community Church? That's really, I think, what the caller was trying to get at.
I am an employee staff member, so I park at Charles Schwab.
Okay.
And walk.
Wow.
Eric.
Does someone pick you up in a golf cart?
Yeah, I don't want to take a spot that someone might need.
I park in the same exact spot every Sunday. Mm-hmm. There's a row of 3 cars. We haven't mentioned who our latest producer is now. That producer Austin, if you haven't heard, is
R.I.P.
He's no longer with us as an organization. He's still alive, Eric.
Yes.
Sorry.
But you will find the Hot Wheels car, Mark Ashton's Hot Wheels car.
Yeah.
And then usually, and I get here third out of these people, and then Jarrett parks, and he always leaves room for me between Mark and him. So thanks, Jarrett. Except sometimes Mark, I don't know what he's doing when he parks sometimes. Yeah. And he parks way over, so then there's not enough space. But Jarrett's never done that. So
wow. Right
by the porch. That's where I park.
Just putting the lead minister on blast right
and
here
Jarrett
on the podcast.
is producing for us, which is why
that's what he was trying to get at the long way.
And only one time was there some weird parking by Mark. So
calling him out.
All right. Well,
we park over, I don't know, typical. We go in the awning entrance, the seniors entrance. We don't park in the senior parking, but
You're ready
you can
for
bet your bottom
retirement.
dollar we're walking in there, and those boys are holding doors for the little seniors with their walkers walking in that door
Why are they little seniors?
because they're just precious. They're cute. It's a term of endearment.
Okay.
Aw.
And we also, I guess we do the not typical thing because our whole family sits us as far away from the kids' entrance as you can get. No shade towards the kids' entrance, but that's just where we sit in service. So I don't know.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I think that sometimes going to church is like going to the grocery store. It's convenient. Like it's, you know what you like, you know your route, you know your routine. And I think a lot of people just, you go, oh, it's like, oh, I'm going to Sunday school.
Yeah.
Gonna sit right here. And so I think it's like we get into like routines. And so the caller's question makes me think like, okay, maybe I need to be more aware of that, where I'm going in? It's a good question to ask because we don't think about it. So
There you go. Eva, do you have anything to add?
I park at the porch too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not in the row with the three.
You're welcome. Usually there's a
No, it's okay.
spot right next to Jarrett.
I'm okay. But yeah, we always park near the porch where New Life, congregants walk in. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. There you go. I mean, I'd say if you're making it to church on Sunday, good job. I'm not really going to question much of where you're walking in. So,
But if not, we have a great online ministry.
oh yeah.
So you can check it out online.
Pretty
anytime.
solid.
Not even have to park. Just stay parked in your garage.
Here you go.
Yep. I was just going to mention too that that's my rap name, Little Senior. All right.
I'd like to hear those raps.
Yeah. They're all geriatric.
Stay tuned.
Anyways, the impossible pivot here from a lighthearted
The
conversation.
uncomfortable pivot.
Yeah, the
I
uncomfortable
actually have
pivot.
geriatric written down in my notes.
Oh, do
so-
you?
Oh.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good. Well,
There we go.
We'll jump ahead.
Perfect.
Natural.
Eva, before we get too far in, tell everyone listening what you do here at the church. What's your role?
Yeah. So right now I'm the director of missions at CCC. I've worked here for about 6 years. Joined staff as the assistant director of missions. So
Okay.
there you go.
And you have graciously decided to come on and share your story of going through divorce and what that's looked like for you, and just help our listeners understand that journey. Maybe they either are going through it themselves, or maybe they just don't have proximity to someone who's gone through it, or whatever that might be. We're really grateful for your time and your willingness to share. Why don't you start by just, tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, that sort of thing.
Yeah. That was on my list of questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But that's okay.
We just want to get to know you better.
Yeah. I'm married to Jordan. Jordan he's 6 years younger than me. So that's kind of a fun fact about Jordan.
Wow.
I know. He's an Omaha police officer. I have two kids with my first husband. Drew is 18, just graduated from high school. And Kate is 16. She's a junior, and so she'll be a senior next year. And then Jordan and I have a son named Austin, who's 5, and we'll be going to kindergarten in the fall. So lots of transition.
And a kindergartner next year.
I know. What am I thinking? and a college freshman.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Got a lot going on.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's get into the story. This is a question that you were prepared for. So, tell us a little bit about your story, your history, and
that's good.
Your first husband, and then how you got to where you are now.
Well, I grew up in a small town just north of here called Blair, and I have a younger brother who is younger than me, but he's a lot taller than me, so I love that. My mom and dad are awesome. They're still married today. Just had a great childhood. Grew up going to church regularly and played sports and was active in school and great friends. And the end of my 8th grade year, I started dating a boy. We went to the 8th grade dance together and actually ended up dating all throughout high school. We went to the same college in Northeast Iowa together. A couple months after college, we got married. And we were married for about 5 years. And during that time, we had my son, Drew. And then not much longer, I was pregnant again. Drew and Kate are only 18 months apart. And so that was kind of shocking. There was more than one thing that led to my ex-husband and I's separation and then later divorce. And, in high school and college, yeah, we were dating, but we were more so just good friends. And, after graduating college, it was just kind of expected, I think, by others and us that we would just get married. And so we did. And, I really put all of my hope in him. I put him on a pedestal, and which I now know was wrong. And I really just set him up for failure. He had no other option, he would eventually come to let me down. So, and I know that was one of my roles in it. So, we initially separated when my son Drew was 13 months old and I was 5 months pregnant. And during this time, I didn't work here at the church. I was a kindergarten teacher. So that just kind of adds to the busyness of my schedule. And I don't know how far you want me to go, but as I was thinking about this, I was remembering, and this was before we were divorced, but my son and I moved out of the home that my ex-husband and I shared. And I remember looking in the newspaper for a place to live, like a real newspaper, not online. And there's just one that just caught my eye. And so I just decided to drive by it. And it was this home that was an earth home. And it was just set kind of in the middle of the city, but like it was very kind of wide open spaces. And that was just the first kind of sweet gesture that I remember, like just that the Lord showed me. It was a space for us to be safe and just to start this new season of our life.
Yeah. I'm curious, especially as someone who grew up in the church, you learned divorce is bad, right? And that's just a thing that I think that's programmed into us. And I think we admit divorce is not God's best. It's not his heart. And we talked last week, if people are curious about, hey, what are the grounds for divorce? You're just listening to this one. We talked, biblically about that. So go back and listen to our conversation with Aaron last week. And I would say it fell into those grounds. But what did you wrestle with, like emotionally and spiritually, as you're someone who was raised in church and now you're dealing with what's in front of you? You're going through a divorce. You have basically not even a toddler yet and a kid on the way. Like, what's the emotional and spiritual stuff happening in your life at that time?
Yeah. I felt a lot of shame. I know last week Aaron talked about kind of the scarlet letter. Mm-hmm. For a long time, I didn't even say I'm a single mom. Like, I couldn't say that. It came with so much shame and like a sense of failure and disappointment. Because though it is common, it's not God's best, and it's not. Yeah, it's not what's best for kids, for marriages, for people, and so it was hard because of our situation. Just emotionally, I felt abandoned. I felt like discarded. I felt unwanted and worthless, and kind of the stages of my kids. I really feel like that was something that God used to show me, like, I do have, like, you do have a purpose, and like, I am still going to use you. I'm still going to, use your life. But I felt super supported by people. As I said, as I was preparing, just thinking back and remembering, that's one of the biggest things that God did is he surrounded me with people. The day I moved out of our home, I had, 5 or 6 people that I had taught with, teachers, and they just came to my house and boxed up my stuff and took out my clothes on hangers, and they just came in and like took control. And I remember watching them, and I felt like I was just this baby bird who, like, I was, just I couldn't do anything on my own. I felt so alone, and then I had these people that just came in and swooped in and said, "We're going to help you," and my family during that time, my mom was the one that was in the delivery room with me, and she was the one that came home with us, and she wasn't only just taking care of my 18-month-old and the baby, but she was taking care of me. I would eat, I would nurse the baby, and then I would go and take a nap. And so just looking back, like that's just another one of the blessings that God like just surrounded me with people.
We were talking before we started recording that I had met you back, before you were remarried, single mom. And I don't think I realized that you were a single mom at first. Like that's not just like something that you lead with or that you're going through that. But just thinking about, you had a community that was around you personally. How did that translate to being in the church? Because I think that's the context that I met you in. But even just like, I think that that's the place where I'm also wondering, like, did you feel supported? Did you feel isolated? Did you feel like you could share what you were going through in that setting?
Yeah. I think I did feel supported, but I also think the church is for couples and for families.
Yeah.
And so I did. There were times when, trying to find a community group, and like, where do I fit? Like, I don't really fit in a couples family group. I don't really fit in an all women's group. I don't really fit with the young adult group. I have a funny story about taking raw chicken to a volleyball barbecue and then not claiming it was mine.
Would you like to tell that story now?
It's kind of funny, but I don't know if it's appropriate. So, we used to have this young adult group. I don't remember what it was called, Young Professionals or something.
Emerge.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
There was a young
And
too.
so, I was like 28. I was like in that range. I'm like, well, I'll go. It's volleyball, right? And so they were like, bring like meat and a side. So I like made this broccoli salad and put it in a bowl. And then I defrosted chicken and I put it in a bag with some marinade and brought it in my little Ziploc. And I know, right?
You were thinking someone was going to whip that up on the grill?
I did.
Oh.
Yeah. And so most people brought, their side that they brought was like chips or cookies in a box.
Just bought from a store.
Yeah. And so I had my like Tupperware of broccoli salad and nobody really ate it, And then everyone just brought brats or hot dogs. And I remember like, I did not like say, here's my chicken. And I remember at the end of the night, somebody was like, whose is this? And I was like, I have no idea. I am not owning up to that. So
Wait, were they actually grilling the brats and the hot dogs? Or
Yeah.
Oh,
They
okay.
just didn't want to grill the chicken?
yeah.
You didn't want to grill the chicken
I
yourself.
didn't want to
right?
like, once
the
I
only
realized that I
one.
was super different,
Yeah.
I didn't want to be like that girl that like, there's a single mom bringing a chicken. Yeah.
Oh. No one would have thought that.
Yeah. But this is really cool. And I was, it was either during the separation or the divorce, CCC was in like the middle of a Joshua series. And, the staircase in the atrium, on both sides of the staircase there are these huge banners. And it was, it was from Joshua 1, where God says, "Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, and do not be discouraged, for I'm with you wherever you'll go." And so for a couple months, like every time I walked into the church, I saw that, and so yeah, I felt like CCC was home. I felt comfortable here. I took advantage of the renewal group divorce care. I did that 2 times, actually. Did counseling. I went through a forgiveness class. It was like a 6-week forgiveness class. And so I did feel supported by our church. There were times when I just felt like I was other, that I was different. And nobody was intentional about that, but.
Looking back at that time, what would you tell someone who's currently in the same situation? What encouragement would you give to them now, you think?
Yeah. I think I would just validate how they're feeling. Like, I remember thinking, this is not how it's supposed to be. And I think I would say to that person, you're right. Like, this is not how it's supposed to be. This is not God's best. This is unfair. But God is near you, and God sees you, and He adores you, and He's in love with you. And I would also tell them to seek community, healthy community, either a counselor or yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So you transitioned, from married pretty quickly to, basically having a toddler and a baby at home. Like, what were the hardest, most difficult parts about becoming a single mom? Just what are just the practical? This is different. This is not what I was expecting when I got pregnant with either of these kids, and now I'm alone. I'm living in my own house. What are just those practical things that, like for us sitting in this room that are married and haven't gone through that or whatever, I just wouldn't understand unless I'm in your shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. Practically I was just so busy. I was a kindergarten teacher, and so I was working full time. I was taking my kids to daycare in the morning and after school, and picking them up. But then it was, I'm cooking for them, and I'm cleaning the house, and I'm doing all the chores. I'm mowing the lawn. I'm, taking out the trash. I'm getting the mail. I mean, going to the grocery store, and chores and bills. I went from living with my parents to living in a dorm, to being married. So I wasn't ever really alone. And so that was difficult for me. I was alone, doing all of those things kind of for the first time, some of those things for the first time. And I have 2 babies, and I'm like heartbroken. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, Alex.
No, that's good. That's good.
And then also emotionally, the biggest thing for me was just as a single mom is just feeling the weight of having to make every decision by myself. Our kind of parenting decisions, if they were, big medical decisions or school decisions, I did that with my ex-husband, but, should I buy a car? How much should I save each month? All of those decisions, it was a lot.
I think we don't always think about, and I'm so glad that you're sharing, because it just helps build empathy when we're looking at someone and when you're sharing that, it's like, yes, there's a lot that you went through solo on your own, and just you sharing that, it's like, yeah, usually we have somebody where we're like, hey, somebody needs to fold the laundry, and that somebody is your significant other. And in your case, it's like that somebody is you, and just holding that load. How did your faith come into play with you going through all of that at the same time? Was there rhythms or things that you remembered, or things that were kind of I don't know if it's easy to build into your life or
Yeah.
things that helped.
Yeah, this might sound simple, but one of the things that we started doing right away was we started walking. Like in the evenings, we'd come home from school and we'd have dinner. I'd feed the baby, and then my parents gifted us a double stroller, and so I would walk, and that was good for like me physically and emotionally, and it was good for my kids to be outside, and so that's something that we did a lot. Another thing that I did during that time is I got involved with Selah, which is here at CCC, and that was kind of a monthly thing on a Saturday morning for 3 or 4 hours, and that was my time. That was my time with the Lord. That was carved out, and that really opened my eyes to just learning more about how to spend time with Jesus.
Is Selah like a prayer, like more intensive prayer?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, and practicing silence and solitude, practicing intercessory prayer, and I learned more about how to read and experience Scripture, and how to just invite God to speak to me through words or images. And so those, were just kind of some rhythms. I want to share something I thought about was during that time, though I had all these great relationships, these people that God had put into my life, it was lonely. It was lonely. And it wasn't, this wasn't supposed to be this way. And this was probably a couple years into the divorce. I remember laying in my bed one night and just crying and, telling God, I don't want to do this by myself. This is so, I feel so alone, and you feel so distant. And it is the only time that I've ever physically felt God's presence. And it felt like I was enveloped, like I was blanketed in God's presence. And I remember it to this day, what it felt like. And it was a beautiful gesture from the Lord. You are not alone. I am here. And I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to abandon you.
The world a lot of times feels like it's built around couples, whether that's church programming or, date nights and all these other things. But as a single mom, I'm sure it felt like that, that you weren't welcome sometimes, or, and how did you kind of push through that, kind of get beyond that lie, or at least not allow yourself to believe that?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said earlier, I felt a lot of shame, a lot of just that people were disappointed in me, and I kind of was a failure. And so I think a lot of what you're talking about, Eric, I put on myself. That wasn't really what people thought, or most people. I do believe that they wanted me there and were welcoming, but that was an insecurity, that I had. And so I think something that was important for me was to keep surrounding myself with people who spoke truth over me. You asked, how did you fight that lie? And whether they were, they had been through my experience or not, or they were just mentors or other people here in the church, seeking guidance, wisdom, and then really allowing God to use them to speak truth over me.
Yeah, that's good.
Obviously, every situation in co-parenting is different, and the involvement even of a spouse is different. And depending on how divorce ends, sometimes it ends with one spouse going to jail or dying or whatever, widowed. So it's all different. And so we're not asking you to answer for every single, situation, but what did it look like as you navigated, co-parenting? Was your ex-husband involved in that? How did you guys, if he was, how did you guys make decisions? And I mean, you alluded to some of that earlier about medical decisions and things you guys had to do together, but just how did you guys navigate that from both of you very young and your kids being very young? Just what did that look like? What are some of the things you learned in that and maybe could offer?
Yeah. I guess right off the bat, something that we did, I made the decision, after we were divorced, that I wasn't going to talk to him about us. I wasn't going to talk about our marriage. I wasn't going to bring that up. I wasn't going to, kind of air his dirty laundry to him or to anyone else. And that our focus was the kids, and that's what we would talk about. And so that was great. Somebody shared that with me, and that was great advice and something that I would encourage other parents to do. But technically, I have full physical custody, and he has visitation, and then we have joint legal custody. And so, when they were little, when they were really little, he would just come over and I would leave because they were babies, and I was still nursing. And then it got to the point where they would go there for one weekend a week, or 1 weeknight and then 1 weekend day. And we did that for a while. And he was involved. I think he was a good dad. I think now he's a great dad. I do remember, it's probably, I don't know, my oldest Drew was probably 6 or 7, and we were in the car and he's in the back seat and he says, "Mom," and I can tell that he had been crying or was upset, and he said, "I love being with you, but why don't I see my dad more?" And so, that was hard to hear, because our actions, our decisions have affected our kids. And that was one of the first instances that one of them voiced it. And so after that, just working with him, they just spent more time there. And their dad was a coach of every sport that they played. And so, when you have practices multiple times a week, he was just a part of that, and so got to see them quite a bit. We made the decision that he and I would be the parents. He and I would be the people that gave the discipline. We both ended up remarrying, and both of our spouses are very involved. But let's say our kids have a consequence and we're disciplining, that comes from either myself or my ex-husband. That doesn't come from the step parent, which has been really good. Behind the scenes, my husband and I are a team. But when we are talking to our kids or giving a consequence, that comes from the parent.
So I think that from what you're saying, it's like the beginning, like you had to you make it sound so easy, but I know like it probably took so much work and grace and humility to step into that and to work together and to figure out how to co-parent. And I love how you talked about just like kids in the middle of those situations and just like thinking about them and considering them. And then, to me, as you're talking, I'm like, man, that's hard work. Like that took 2 minutes, but man, that's months and weeks and years of hard work. And what would you give and what advice would you give to someone who is in the middle of maybe tension that they can't imagine, or they don't feel like they can find that peace and redemption yet, or they're like, that doesn't seem possible. Like with where I'm at and with what I'm going through, like, I don't want to do that.
And I would have told you 16 years ago that that's how I felt, Jess. I didn't want to do that. I didn't feel like I wanted to do that. I didn't want to look at him. I didn't want to talk to him. I didn't want to. And so it's not easy. And I think, in my situation, that I made that decision and then God was faithful. Like God helped me to actually do those things. But I would tell somebody like, I would encourage you to pray. Like tell God what you're thinking. Like he wants to know. He knows, right? He knows how we feel and what's going on. And but like, tell him, be real with him. Tell him, I don't want to do this. I don't want to forgive this person. I don't want to co-parent with them. And then I think ask God to soften your heart. Ask God for like eyes to view your ex-spouse as he views them. And, thinking about, ways that I have failed the Lord, the ways that I have sinned, like I am no different. And the forgiveness and the grace that God has shown me, and he's asking me to extend that to everyone, including him. And so,
When you said that, you asked God to give you eyes to see your ex the way he does, is that kind of where the healing process began for you, you think? And was that kind of like, okay, I'm asking God to do this, but it didn't happen overnight, I'm assuming? Like,
no, I think it was like the forgiveness journey. I think forgiveness for me was a decision. It was a rational, thoughtful decision. And then every day, multiple times a day, I would ask God to meet me in my weakness. Like, I don't want to do this. This is what he deserves. And I want to give him his punishment, but God met me in my weakness, and he helped me continue to make that choice to forgive and to continue to think about my big kids, to think about my son and my daughter who had no role in this, but they're the ones that are in the middle of it.
Yeah.
How, I'm just curious, like just more facts based, I guess, like how you both are remarried, right? You and your ex-husband. And so what was maybe some of the timeline for remarriage there? And like, how did you navigate some of that? Like, cause things didn't work out right between you and your ex-husband. And so was there like bitterness towards, okay, when he starts dating or whatever, that you're like, okay, now I've been replaced or whatever? I'm sure at some point there just has to be those feelings of like somebody else is walking into my life and my kids' lives because of this. So how did you just navigate just that tension, like personally, knowing that, all right, I'm raising these kids, but also, and he had to probably navigate that when you had a husband, like, who is this other person that's just going to be a part of my kids' lives? That's difficult. Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, it was difficult. He got remarried about 3 years later, and, I didn't know her. Her name is Dylan. And one of the first memories I have when they were married was, I think one of the kids was sick, and I was taking them over to their house because she was going to stay home with them from school or from daycare. And, I remember backing up out of the driveway, and there's a glass door, and she's standing with my daughter on her hip and my son standing by her side. And it was so hard. Because like that was supposed to be me. So it was hard. And I feared that I would be replaced. I feared that I had to compete with her, because my kids were going to be around her a lot. And, is she going to be a better mom than me? Are they going to love her more than they love me? And, I can say now that she is a good friend of mine. And, it was really sweet. I told you earlier that my kids played a lot of sports growing up, and I didn't want my kids to have to choose after they were done a game. Like, do I go visit my mom or my dad, or my mom's family or my dad's family? And so I, again, made the decision, we're going to sit together. And so through that, on the sidelines of t-ball and soccer, I got to know her, and I saw more of her heart. I saw the kind of woman she was, and she didn't want to be their mom. She didn't want to replace me, but she did want to love them, and she wanted to help parent them. And so, it's a cool story. But it was hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing just, the details and obviously the pain and the struggle and the rawness of what those feelings are.
Well, and then you remarried and eventually had another little baby. It's now going into kindergarten, I think you said.
Yeah.
What was it like stepping into parenting again later in life? And then was there any, I would say, insecurities, unique challenges that came from having a younger family, but you've already been through some other parenting things? And what was that like for you?
Yeah. Well, this is the geriatric part.
Oh, hey, call back.
This is how it all ties together.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I was pregnant with Austin, I was 39, and my big kids were 13 and 11, and it was just funny, because they were there for mom getting really big and mom's feet swelling, and they got to see it all, and they got to be around when Austin was a newborn and he's crying for no reason. And, but yeah, it was different. I think, I'd never really parented with anyone.
Yeah.
When I was first separated, our oldest was 13 months old. And so, we'd had that first year together, my ex-husband and I, but other than that, I'd never really, at a distance with their dad. And so that was a challenge. And, I had 2 kids. I had been a teacher for 15 years. Like, I knew kids. And so I had to learn to let my husband, Jordan, parent and take care of the baby and figure things out. And so, I think even to this day, we're still learning how to parent together, it was funny. I thought, when I was a single mom, I thought that was kind of unique to parents who lived separately, and it's not, there's some different challenges in that, but,
what have been some positive, unexpected takeaways from parenting in a blended family?
Yeah. So my ex-husband and his wife, they have a 9-year-old, and my son, Austin, thinks that he is like a brother, and he stays at our house overnight sometimes, and sometimes they'll come to church with us, and it's just kind of funny introducing them to people, right? Mm-hmm. They're really weirded out. Like, I'll say, "This is the kids' brother," and they're like, okay. But yeah, just that kind of, I don't want to say extended family. But birthdays, we always do together, our 2 sets of families. And, it's not easy. It's still awkward at times, but we do it for Drew. We do it for Kate. And, I was, telling somebody the other day, it would be interesting, to have my kids here right now and to have them share how the divorce has affected them. But yeah.
And for them, that's all they knew, too. They just knew both of you growing up in 2 separate houses. Mm-hmm. And so they didn't witness what led to that and all those kinds of things, which obviously is different than every situation. Right. Again, they're all a little bit different, but it seems to me like even you're talking about this just takes so much humility on both your part, your ex-husband's part, both of your spouse's parts, to know like, I'm walking into an awkward situation. I know I'm like not a part of this family, quote unquote. And now I got to walk into meet ex-in-law. Like there's so much mess that happens there. And it probably doesn't happen this way a lot because it takes so much humility to be able to sit with a family and sit with, your ex-husband's now spouse and build a relationship with her and the kids. And so I just want to commend like everybody in that situation. Yeah. Obviously it's not perfect, but man, the amount of humility that it takes and the self-sacrifice for the sake of our kids. And, I think that's just so much of what the gospel is on display is, okay, it's less of me, more of others. And I'm here to serve others. And so I think we don't hear a lot of stories maybe that feel as nice as this or as unified as this because our pride gets in the way a lot of times. And it just takes a lot of work to continue to crucify that and all that.
And the cool thing is, my ex-husband and I think made these choices, right? That as best we could, we were going to make it about the kids and, do things together. And our families, our parents, and extended families have followed. When our kids play high school basketball, they have their cheering section of like 12 to 15 people who are there for them. And it is special.
I'm curious, just before we move on too much further, I know you and I were talking off this and you were like, make sure I get to talk about what's one thing that single moms need to hear more often. And so, because I think when you're in that loneliness, when you're in that isolation, when you're going to work all day, slugging it out, and you get home and do even more work and probably sleepless nights and you're just drained, like to that single mom who's living in the middle of that right now, what's something she needs to hear more often, you think?
Yeah. I would say to her, like, you are not alone and you're seen and you're loved. It's not always going to be this hard. I would say you have a God that adores you and that loves you and is not disappointed in you. And I would say to her, like, run to him and be with him.
Just to add on to that, I'm also thinking, like, what would you say to the people that are close to people going through that? What did those people need to hear, like, when they're standing in that gap and holding space for people and grieving with them? Like, what do they need to hear?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jess. I would just encourage people that there's not one right thing to say. And a lot of times when we say things, it can come off as kind of offensive or we say the wrong thing. And but I just had people like show up for me and they were there and they listened to me. They were in proximity to me, like they hung out with me. Having 2 kids, 2 babies around didn't bother them, like I took my kids everywhere. Everywhere. But I think the thing that I would tell them is just to show up, just to, as awkward as it is for you or as difficult as, like you don't know what to do, like just be there and, maybe ask questions and listen.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's so much to take in. And I think it's just, I think no matter who you are, whether you're affected by someone who's gone through a divorce or you're going through one yourself. I mean, there's just, when you're in the middle of it, in that moment, it sometimes maybe the advice doesn't feel good. It's like, oh, well, I haven't lived that yet. I haven't had time to experience that healing. Mm-hmm. But I think just your encouragement to them is so strong. And, I guess, is there, as we wrap things up, is there anything else that you feel like you didn't get to say or something else you'd want to add to this? If not, that's okay. But I want to give you space to do that.
Yeah, I was thinking about, just what redemption looks like in this mess.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what it was.
Yeah.
Created by both of us. And, it makes me think of, like I said earlier, God has shown me, and has encouraged me to remember. And, in Joshua, when the Israelites finally crossed the Jordan River, and God says to Joshua, grab 12 people from the tribe, from 12 tribes, and have them get a stone and to build a memorial. And when you walk by it, when your children walk by it, you can tell them what I did. And I think that's why I said yes to Alex.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is not Eva's story.
Yeah.
It was this is God's story. Mm-hmm. This is what God did. And so there was pain and suffering, and this is almost 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
And there was sin, but what stands out today is looking back and remembering that God was there, mm-hmm. and that he never left. And even when I messed up, even when I sinned, he was still there, and God used this mess.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Eva. Mm-hmm. Appreciate your time. Yeah. Appreciate your vulnerability and honesty and openness to share with us. It's not easy for people to do. And I think it's still taboo in some ways in the church world. And so I'm sure that feels, even more vulnerable in a lot of ways, because you're wondering and maybe questioning what you're opening yourself up to when you're this open. So thank you. I just wanted you to know that we understand that, and that's not lost on us, and really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. If you're watching this or listening to this and you have any questions or concerns, you can always reach out to us on social media, on Instagram or TikTok at CCCOMA Podcast, or you can send us an email to podcast@cccomaha.org, or leave us a voicemail, as you heard at the top of the show. It's always fun to hear your voice on the podcast. Call 402-885-9930. But until next time, we'll talk to you then.